On August 13, 1944, General George Patton stood in the command center of the U.S. Third Army, scrutinizing a detailed map of northern France. The Allied advance in Normandy had progressed remarkably in the weeks following D-Day, and Patton's forces had just captured the small town of Argentan, located roughly 15 kilometers north of Falaise. The situation before him was breathtaking. Tens of thousands of German soldiers, largely from the remnants of the Seventh Army and elements of panzer divisions, were effectively trapped in a narrowing pocket. Patton's tanks were poised for a decisive thrust toward Falaise, which could have sealed the pocket completely and annihilated a significant portion of the German forces in Normandy. However, just as Patton was preparing for this bold maneuver, a phone call came through that would alter the course of events. On the line was General Omar Bradley, commander of the U.S. First Army. His orders were unequivocal. "Stop where you are. Hold your position at Argentan," Bradley instructed. "Do not advance toward Falaise." Patton, known for his aggressive style and rapid maneuvers, was stunned. To him, the decision seemed almost incomprehensible. The Germans were in chaos, their lines were collapsing, and the momentum of the American advance could have delivered a knockout blow that would shorten the campaign in France and save countless Allied lives. Yet Bradley's caution was deliberate and rooted in the broader strategic and political considerations of the Allied command. The coordination between the U.S. and British forces under Field Marshal Montgomery was a delicate matter. Moving Patton's Third Army further north with Montgomery's agreement risked friendly fire incidents between American and British troops. Communications and identification protocols between the different armies were still imperfect, and a misstep could result in disastrous accidental engagements. From Bradley's perspective, the tactical opportunity was outweighed by these operational risks. Meanwhile, the Germans were exploiting the pause. For 8 critical days, the corridor between Argentan and Falaise remained open, allowing thousands of warden German soldiers to escape encirclement. These were not ordinary conscripts, but experienced troops, many from elite SS panzer divisions, who would later regroup and form the backbone of German defenses in subsequent battles, including the Ardennes offensive. The failure to close the pocket in mid-August had far-reaching consequences, extending the war in Europe and costing thousands of Allied lives in the campaigns that followed. Patton's Third Army, renowned for its speed and aggressive tactics, had already covered more than 200 kilometers in the weeks after Operation Cobra. Cities and towns such as Le Mans, Alençon, and Argentan fell with remarkable rapidity. Patton's armored divisions were ideally positioned to complete the encirclement from the north, linking up with the Canadian and British forces advancing from the north under Montgomery's command. This classic pincer movement would have trapped the remaining German forces entirely, leaving no avenue for retreat. Yet political considerations and hierarchical command structures dictated otherwise. Montgomery's forces were technically equal in rank to Bradley's, and any unilateral action by Patton could have caused friction within the Allied leadership. Bradley, with the weight of operational caution and the need to maintain Allied unity, opted to enforce the stop order. While tactically frustrating, the decision reflected the complexities of coalition warfare, where operational efficiency often had to be balanced against political and diplomatic considerations. During this period, German commanders, including Field Marshal Günther von Kluge, recognized the peril their forces faced. Encircled and under relentless pressure from Patton's advancing troops, the German armies were faced with a choice: attempt a breakout and risk destruction, or comply with Hitler's orders to hold their positions. Hitler's directives consistently demanded stubborn resistance, even in situations where strategic withdrawal would have been the wiser choice. This rigidity, combined with the Allied hesitation, allowed a significant portion of the German forces to escape the trap. By August 15th, the situation in the Argentan-Falaise corridor remained critical. Patton's armored divisions were ready to exploit the minimal resistance and seal the pocket, yet the stop order remained in effect. The corridor measured only 15 kilometers, a distance that could have been covered within a few hours under normal circumstances. Even accounting for German defensive positions, a coordinated push could have closed the escape route in a matter of days. But the cautious coordination required with Montgomery's northern forces imposed an artificial delay that proved costly. The consequences of this pause were starkly visible in the subsequent weeks. As Canadian and British divisions methodically advanced from the north, German forces slipped through the widening gap, regrouped, and established new defensive lines. The Third Army, while prepared to press the attack, was restrained, leaving the Germans with enough time to organize their retreat in an orderly fashion.
The combination of political caution, concern for inter-allied coordination, and strict adherence to hierarchical command structures effectively allowed the German army to survive a situation that could have been cataclysmic for them. Historians have debated the decision ever since. Some argue that the halt at Argentan was a necessary measure to avoid operational confusion and potential friendly fire incidents. Others contend that it was a missed opportunity of historic proportions, one that prolonged the war and led to unnecessary Allied casualties in the fall and winter campaigns. The reality lies somewhere in between. The decision was shaped by both genuine operational concerns and the intricate politics of coalition warfare. Yet the cost of allowing seasoned German troops to escape was undeniable. The open corridor between Argentan and Falaise stands as a testament to the tension between tactical boldness and strategic prudence. Patton, ever the aggressive commander, saw the opportunity for a decisive blow. Bradley, cautious and politically aware, saw the risks of premature action. Montgomery, advancing from the north, represented the constraints imposed by coalition dynamics. The 8-day delay would allow tens of thousands of German troops to escape, later to fight fiercely in battles that would claim the lives of thousands of American soldiers, particularly in the Ardennes offensive. By August 21, when the Falaise pocket was finally closed, much of the German army had already evacuated. What remained were largely less experienced units, while the core of veteran soldiers had regrouped to form the backbone of German defenses in subsequent campaigns. Patton's diary reflects his frustration, noting that the halt was the greatest mistake of the campaign, a sentiment that would echo throughout Allied strategic discussions in the months to come. The halt at Argentan illustrates the complex interplay of tactics, strategy, and politics in wartime decision-making. While the Third Army could have delivered a crushing blow to the German forces in Normandy, the broader considerations of inter-Allied coordination and political prudence dictated otherwise. The consequences of this decision reverberated through the fall and winter of 1944, influencing battles in the Ardennes, the Siegfried Line, and beyond. The actions or inactions of these few critical days would shape the course of the war in Western Europe and serve as a stark reminder of how opportunity and caution collide on the battlefield. The pause at Argentan created an unintended lifeline for the German forces trapped in the Falaise pocket. While Allied planners had envisioned a rapid and decisive closure, the gap left between the American Third Army and the advancing Canadian and British formations allowed the Germans to evacuate a significant portion of their units. Over the next 8 days, this open corridor became the artery through which tens of thousands of soldiers, along with vehicles, artillery, and equipment, managed to slip away from the imminent encirclement. The retreating units were not mere remnants of a shattered army. They included some of the most experienced and disciplined formations in the German military, including multiple SS Panzer divisions that had already seen heavy combat in Normandy. The German commanders, acutely aware of the threat posed by Patton's rapidly advancing forces, took advantage of the pause. Field Marshal
Feldgunther von Kluge and other senior officers implemented an organized withdrawal. Despite the chaos that normally accompanies a retreat under pressure, the Germans maintained cohesion, ensuring that combat-effective units could escape. They abandoned some materiel and vehicles, but prioritized the preservation of trained personnel. This careful extraction enabled the Germans to regroup further east, where they would form the backbone of subsequent defensive operations in France, Belgium, and later during the Ardennes offensive. The escape was facilitated by the terrain itself. Narrow country roads, hedgerows, and small towns allowed German units to navigate with relative stealth, avoiding constant observation by Allied air reconnaissance. Allied bombers, however, attempted to disrupt the retreat by targeting columns and road networks. The attacks destroyed vehicles and forced convoys to detour through fields and secondary routes, slowing the German movement. Despite this, the main flow of soldiers continued, often under the cover of night, and using knowledge of the local geography to evade full-scale destruction. The strategic implications of the escape were profound. Had the pocket been fully sealed in mid-August, the majority of these forces, numbering anywhere from 20,000 to 50,000 men, would have been captured or destroyed. Instead, these troops would later participate in battles that inflicted heavy casualties on the Allies.
The elite SS Panzer divisions that escaped would be redeployed in the Ardennes in December 1944, where they played a critical role in the Battle of the Bulge, demonstrating both the resilience of the German military and the consequences of the missed opportunity at Falaise. Veterans of these units, many of whom had been trapped in Normandy, brought combat experience and tactical knowledge that would significantly challenge the Allied advance in Belgium and beyond. The human cost of this delay became apparent in the months following the Normandy campaign. Allied forces, particularly the Americans, faced fiercer resistance as they advanced through northern France and into Belgium. The soldiers who had been allowed to escape through the
Argentan-Falaise corridor had been battle-hardened, disciplined, and capable of organizing effective defensive positions. American units that engaged these forces in late 1944 often found themselves confronting the same soldiers who might have been captured or destroyed weeks earlier in Normandy. Patton himself noted this bitter irony, recognizing that the failure to close the pocket had allowed experienced enemy combatants to survive and prolong the war. Operationally, the German withdrawal also enabled the preservation of valuable equipment. Though some vehicles and heavy weaponry were abandoned or destroyed, a significant portion of the German armored and mechanized assets survived. These units would later be refitted and redeployed to reinforce critical positions along the Siegfried Line and other defensive sectors. The effect of this continuity in combat power was substantial, as it allowed the Germans to mount coordinated counterattacks and sustain defensive operations far longer than they otherwise could have. For the Allied commanders, the pause highlighted the delicate balance between caution and aggression. General Bradley's decision to halt Patton's advance was influenced by concerns over coordination with Montgomery's forces, the risk of friendly fire incidents, and the complex political relationships within the coalition. From a purely tactical perspective, however, the opportunity to trap and destroy a large portion of the German army had been lost. This tension between operational prudence and battlefield initiative illustrates the complexity of coalition warfare, where military decisions are often intertwined with diplomatic and political considerations. Despite the missed opportunity, Allied forces continued to advance methodically. Canadian and British units approached from the north, while American formations pushed from the south. Artillery and air support relentlessly targeted German positions, attempting to slow the escape and inflict maximum damage. The chaos created by the bombing of roads and the destruction of vehicles made the retreat arduous, yet the Germans managed to preserve their combat effectiveness, demonstrating remarkable line under extreme pressure. The retreat also had a psychological impact on both sides. For the Allies, seeing German forces escape despite the apparent encirclement was a source of frustration and a bitter reminder of the costs of caution. Soldiers who had expected a decisive victory found themselves facing experienced enemy troops again in subsequent battles. For the Germans, the successful evacuation reinforced their ability to recover and reorganize even under dire circumstances, bolstering morale and maintaining cohesion within the surviving units. Historians continue to debate the number of German troops who successfully escaped the Falaise pocket. Estimates vary, but most agree that between 20,000 and 50,000 soldiers, including elite SS Panzer divisions, managed to slip through the corridor. This evacuation provided a core of experienced fighters who would later form the backbone of German defensive operations throughout the winter and into the Ardennes offensive. The survival of these units prolonged the conflict in Western Europe and directly influenced the outcome of several critical battles in late 1944. From a strategic perspective, the failure to close the Falaise pocket represents a significant what-if moment in military history. The Allies possessed the means to deliver a devastating blow to the German forces in Normandy, yet political, operational, and interpersonal considerations among commanders prevented the opportunity from being fully exploited. The consequences of this decision illustrate the interconnectedness of tactical actions, operational planning, and strategic outcomes in large-scale warfare. A single pause, motivated by caution and coalition politics, had ripple effects that extended far beyond the immediate battlefield, shaping the trajectory of the Allied advance and the experience of soldiers for months to come. In essence, the open corridor between Argentan and Falaise became a conduit for German survival and a cautionary tale for future operations. The retreating soldiers were able to fight again, inflict further casualties, and delay the Allied advance. The events highlight the importance of timing, coordination, and
effectiveness in military operations. While the Third Army was prepared to exploit the situation, broader strategic considerations imposed limits on battlefield initiative, ultimately allowing a significant portion of the enemy to escape destruction. The lessons of the Argentan-Falaise pause resonate beyond the Normandy campaign. They underscore the critical importance of rapid decision-making, inter-allied communication, and the consequences of operational hesitation. Patton's frustration, Bradley's caution, and Montgomery's methodical approach together exemplify the complex interplay of personalities, politics, and strategy that characterizes coalition warfare. The German escape through the open corridor serves as a reminder that opportunities in war are often fleeting, and that the cost of inaction or delay can be measured in lives, resources, and the prolongation of conflict. By late August, when the Falaise pocket was finally closed, much of the German army had already escaped. Only a fraction of the forces remained to be captured or neutralized, while the rest would continue to challenge Allied operations across northern France and into Belgium. The pause at Argentan allowed the Germans not only to survive, but to fight again with renewed strength, turning what could have been a decisive victory into a protracted campaign. The consequences of this delay were felt acutely in subsequent battles, including the brutal winter fighting in the Ardennes, where the surviving veterans of the Falaise escape contributed to one of the most intense and costly campaigns for the Allies in Europe.
The events at Argentan and the Falaise Gap illustrate not only the operational challenges of warfare, but also the profound impact of command decisions shaped by politics, personalities, and coalition dynamics. The pause ordered by General Omar Bradley, halting Patton's advance at Argentan, was not merely a tactical decision, it was a calculated choice shaped by considerations far beyond the immediate battlefield. At first glance, the directive may seem conservative or even timid, yet it was rooted in the complexities of multinational command structures and the need to maintain cohesion among Allied forces. Understanding the rationale behind this decision requires an examination of both the operational environment and the intricate web of relationships among commanders. Bradley's concerns centered on the coordination between American and British Canadian forces. The Allied armies were advancing along parallel axes, and each had its own command structure, communication protocols, and operational priorities. The Third Army under Patton was moving rapidly through Argentan, poised to strike north and link with the forces under General Montgomery advancing from the north. While the tactical opportunity to trap and annihilate the German forces in the Falaise pocket was clear to Patton, Bradley had to consider the potential consequences of an uncoordinated advance. Miscommunication or misalignment could result in friendly fire incidents, particularly between American and British units. Such incidents could have been disastrous, undermining both operational effectiveness and morale. Beyond the immediate tactical considerations, political factors loomed large. The Allied coalition was composed of multiple nations, each with its own command priorities and political sensitivities. Montgomery, commanding the British Canadian forces, had a significant stake in maintaining influence and recognition for his contributions to the campaign. Any unilateral American action that bypassed Montgomery's sector could have sparked friction, jeopardizing coalition harmony. Bradley, aware of these sensitivities, opted for caution. The pause at Argentan was not only a measure to prevent
Entanglements, but also a political maneuver designed to respect coalition boundaries and prevent disputes between senior commanders. Patton, ever the aggressive and decisive tactician, found the order frustrating and deeply counterintuitive. From his perspective, the corridor between Argentan and Falaise represented an extraordinary opportunity to trap a large portion of the German army. The terrain was favorable, the German resistance in the immediate vicinity was minimal, and Patton's forces were fully prepared to exploit the situation. In his mind, halting the advance was a wasted opportunity, one that allowed tens of thousands of enemy soldiers to escape, regroup, and fight another day. Patton's frustration was compounded by his understanding of German operational discipline. The units trapped in the pocket were battle-hardened, highly trained, and capable of executing organized retreats. By allowing them to escape, Patton knew the Allies would face these same experienced troops in future engagements, increasing casualties and prolonging the campaign. The complexity of coalition warfare cannot be overstated. Decisions were rarely made in isolation, and every operational choice had to balance military objectives with diplomatic considerations. Montgomery's slower, methodical approach contrasted sharply with Patton's aggressive style, highlighting a fundamental tension between speed and caution in coalition operations. Bradley's directive to halt was, in part, a reflection of this tension. He prioritized alliance stability and operational coordination over immediate tactical advantage,
choosing to wait for Montgomery's northern forces to close the gap rather than risk unplanned engagements. From a strategic perspective, this decision was defensible, but it came at a significant operational cost. The pause at Argentan had immediate and far-reaching consequences. The open corridor allowed a substantial portion of the German 7th Army and Panzer divisions to escape destruction. These units included elite SS formations with extensive combat experience. Their survival preserved the core of Germany's defensive capability in the West, enabling them to regroup,
refit, and participate in later operations. Notably, these veterans would play a decisive role in the Ardennes offensive, demonstrating the long-term impact of the missed opportunity at Falaise. The very units that could have been eliminated in August 1944 were instead available to inflict casualties and delay Allied advances during the winter campaign. The operational consequences for the Allies were profound. American units faced more experienced German resistance as they pushed through northern France and into Belgium. The time and resources required to engage and defeat these escaped units extended the campaign, increased casualties, and complicated logistical planning. The battle-hardened German soldiers who escaped through the Argentan-Falaise corridor brought with them a deep understanding of Allied tactics, allowing them to mount effective defenses and counterattacks. From the perspective of frontline troops, the pause seemed illogical, a frustrating gap between opportunity and execution that resulted in avoidable losses. Strategically, the decision to halt highlights the inherent trade-offs in high-level command. Military leaders must balance the imperative to achieve tactical victories with the need to maintain operational coherence and alliance cohesion. Bradley's choice exemplifies this balance. He weighed the immediate advantage of trapping German forces against the potential risks of friendly fire, inter-allied friction, and the political fallout of undermining Montgomery. The decision was not an abdication of responsibility, but a calculated judgment that coalition stability and coordinated operations were paramount. Nevertheless, the operational cost was undeniable. The Allies allowed thousands of experienced enemy soldiers to escape, soldiers who would continue to resist and inflict casualties in the months ahead. The lessons of Argentan extend beyond the specifics of the Normandy campaign. They underscore the complexities inherent in multinational military operations, where command decisions are influenced not only by tactical and strategic considerations, but also by political, cultural, and interpersonal factors. The tension between Patton's
aggressive, risk-tolerant approach and Bradley's cautious, politically aware strategy highlights the challenges of coordinating complex operations across multiple armies with differing priorities and operational doctrines. Understanding these dynamics is crucial for analyzing coalition warfare, where success depends not only on firepower and maneuver, but also on the ability to harmonize diverse command structures and maintain cohesion among Allied forces. In the aftermath of the Falaise pause, historians have debated the merits of Bradley's decision. Critics argue that the halt squandered a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to destroy a significant portion of the German army in Normandy, potentially shortening the war and reducing Allied casualties. Supporters contend that the risks of uncoordinated action were genuine and that maintaining coalition integrity was essential for long-term success. Both perspectives have merit, reflecting the dual realities of warfare, the need for decisive action, and the necessity of careful coordination. Ultimately, the pause at Argentan exemplifies the interplay of tactical, operational, and strategic decision-making in war. It demonstrates how a single decision, shaped by political, interpersonal, and logistical considerations, can reverberate across the broader theater of operations. The consequences of that decision were felt in the Ardennes, the Siegfried Line, and throughout the Allied push into Germany. The troops who escaped the Falaise pocket were not merely survivors. They became a core of seasoned fighters, capable of inflicting significant casualties and prolonging the conflict. The decision to halt Patton, while defensible from a coalition perspective, thus had enduring implications for the trajectory of the European campaign. The human dimension of the decision is also critical. Soldiers on both sides experienced its effects directly. American troops faced more intense and sustained combat as a result of the escaped German forces, enduring higher casualties and prolonged engagements. German soldiers, conversely, gained the opportunity to survive, regroup, and fight again, demonstrating the interplay of leadership, timing,
and operational decision-making in shaping the course of war. The pause at Argentan thus serves as a stark reminder of how strategic and political considerations can influence operational outcomes, often with profound consequences for those on the front lines. In conclusion, the decision to halt Patton at Argentan represents a case study in the complexities of coalition warfare. It highlights the challenges of coordinating multinational forces, balancing tactical opportunities with strategic and political realities, and managing the interplay of personalities and command styles. While the immediate result was a missed opportunity to destroy a significant portion of the German army, the broader lessons extend to the importance of communication, coordination, and foresight in large-scale military operations. The repercussions of this decision, felt across subsequent campaigns, underscore how high-level command choices can shape the course of war, for better or for worse. The halt at Argentan and the partial escape of German forces through the Falaise corridor had consequences that reverberated far beyond the summer of 1944. What began as a tactical pause to respect coalition boundaries and minimize friendly fire ultimately shaped the operational landscape of the European campaign for months to come. The soldiers who slipped through the partially closed pocket were not ordinary troops. They were experienced, disciplined veterans of the Normandy battles. They would go on to reinforce German defensive lines, train new recruits, and participate in the counteroffensives that challenged the Allies long after the initial liberation of France. In the immediate aftermath, Allied forces continued their advance, pushing through northern France and into Belgium. Patton's Third Army had been poised to trap the Germans, and the narrow corridor that remained open allowed tens of thousands of enemy soldiers to retreat in relatively good order. These forces included elements of elite SS Panzer divisions, battle-hardened units that had seen the worst of Normandy, and were now free to regroup and re-enter combat. The operational cost of their escape was immense. Units that could have been
Destroyed in August 1944 instead survived to fight in subsequent battles, forcing the Allies into prolonged and bloody engagements during the autumn and winter campaigns. The Ardennes offensive of December 1944, known as the Battle of the Bulge, vividly illustrates the long-term impact of the Falaise toss. Many of the German units that had escaped through the Argentan-Falaise corridor played pivotal roles in this surprise counterattack. Veteran officers and experienced non-commissioned officers who had managed orderly retreats in August now commanded men and coordinated operations with devastating effectiveness. The very soldiers who could have been eliminated months earlier became a key factor in one of the bloodiest battles fought by American forces in the European theater. The pause at Argentan, intended to maintain coalition order and prevent friendly fire, indirectly contributed to the intensity and duration of the Ardennes conflict. The strategic implications extended beyond immediate battles. By allowing these German units to survive, the Allies faced a more resilient and adaptive enemy in every subsequent engagement. The surviving troops became the core of defensive formations along the Siegfried Line and in other fortified positions across Western Germany. They brought with them not only combat experience, but also an understanding of Allied tactics, having faced American and British units in Normandy. This knowledge made subsequent operations more difficult and costly, increasing the human and material toll on the advancing Allied forces. From a broader perspective, the Argentan pause underscores the tension between operational opportunity and coalition politics. Bradley's decision, shaped by the need to respect Montgomery's sector and prevent inter-Allied conflict, reflects the complexities of multinational warfare. Military leaders must balance the potential gains of bold, decisive action against the risks of disrupting alliances, miscommunication, and unintended consequences. While Patton's aggressive approach could have resulted in a spectacular tactical victory, it also carried the risk of politically sensitive incidents that might have
jeopardized coalition cohesion. In this context, Bradley's caution, though operationally costly, was politically prudent. The human cost of the partial escape is stark. American soldiers faced more prolonged combat and higher casualties because of the surviving German veterans. Historians estimate that tens of thousands of additional Allied casualties occurred in the months following the Normandy campaign, in part due to the missed opportunity at Falaise.
The Ardennes, Rheinforst, and subsequent operations against fortified German positions demanded intense labor, courage, and sacrifice from troops who could have benefited from a swifter collapse of German resistance in northern France. In essence, the decision to pause Patton's advance extended the war in Western Europe by several months, and the cost was measured in both human life and strategic time lost. The German perspective further highlights the consequences of the pause. Commanders such as Field Marshal Walter Model and other senior officers were able to preserve a portion of their forces, maintain unit cohesion, and prepare new defensive positions. The surviving panzer divisions, including the elite SS units, became the nucleus for reorganized formations that would contest every Allied advance into Germany. Their experience, discipline, and tactical knowledge, carried forward from Normandy, directly influenced the outcome of engagements in Belgium, the Rhineland, and the Ardennes. The escape from Falaise allowed Germany to sustain combat effectiveness far beyond what might have been possible had Patton's forces acted without restraint. In the final analysis, the Argentan-Falaise episode exemplifies the interplay of tactical, operational, and strategic decision-making in coalition warfare. It demonstrates how a single high-level decision, motivated by coordination, politics, and concern for alliance cohesion, can shape the trajectory of a campaign for months. The pause, while defensible in its reasoning, created a ripple effect that prolonged the fighting, increased casualties, and enabled the German army to field experienced troops in subsequent operations. The events reveal the challenges of balancing
immediate opportunity with long-term coalition stability, and the consequences serve as a sobering reminder of how decisions at the command level resonate through the battlefield, affecting soldiers, campaigns, and ultimately the course of the war. The legacy of the decision is still debated by historians today. Some argue that had the Falaise pocket been fully closed in August 1944, the war in Western Europe could have ended sooner, saving countless lives and accelerating the Allied advance into Germany. Others contend that the risks of uncoordinated action, friendly fire, and political friction justified the halt, illustrating the complex calculus commanders face in wartime. What is undeniable, however, is that the soldiers who survived the pause, veteran German units, continued to fight with remarkable effectiveness, shaping the outcome of subsequent campaigns and testing the resolve of Allied forces. In conclusion, the Falaise corridor's partial opening represents both a tactical misfortune and a case study in coalition warfare. It underscores the critical influence of leadership decisions on the broader war effort, the operational consequences of political considerations, and the enduring impact of human judgment under conditions of uncertainty. The decisions made in August 1944 at Argentan did not merely affect a single battle. They set the stage for months of subsequent fighting, influenced casualty rates, and shaped the final phases of the European theater. The long shadow of Falaise reminds us that war is rarely a sequence of isolated engagements, but a continuum shaped by command, coordination, and the delicate balance between audacity and prudence.